exposing and projecting the content of Sam Harris into more mainstream platforms causes this discourse to be more rationalized, but moreover, we think that it tunes down the ultra-left and the ultra-right because we have less radicalization on our side, where we have less dismissive and less defensive talking on each side of the paradigm. I'm going to give you 3 structural reasons as a result of this media being on mainstream platforms. These are 3 structural reasons that the opposition must agree with. And I'm going to show you the impacts of these 3 structural traits. First of all, is this increases the scale of audiences. Second of all, it diversifies as a spectrum of viewers. And third of all, it tunes down and moderates the attitude and the narrative and the framing of the content as well as the traction that this content creates. These are 3 structural characteristics that the opposition must agree with, and I will go on elaborating why this is the case. First of all, is this increases the scale of traction and viewership. Why is this the case? We think that YouTube and social media ultimately are very cellular in terms of the algorithms and the way that people receive this information. We think that YouTube and social media oftentimes are competing within social media space to garner viewership. It's very rare that one single video can get celebrity status with as much views as mainstream media. Mainstream media, inherently because of its established platforms, online, offline, digital newspaper, inherently has much more established in terms of its scale. Also, a sub-point to this motion to this point is that it has less incentive to garner more views through more radicalizing or through more clickbaits. I mean, it still does, but because it already has a lot of retained viewership, that's why it has more scale inherently and less added incentive to be more inflammatory and more clickbait to get more scale. That's why they have to agree that mainstream media has more scale. What is the impact of this trait? It's important that more people see the process of analysis of content on the intellectual dark web. On their side of the paradigm, where this content is only enclosed in cellular channels on YouTube, it means that the conclusion of this content is more easily forwarded, reposted, spread word by mouth. In this process, losing a lot of the original analysis or the reasons or the contingent factors, for example, to why colonialism might be good. It might be good because of rule of law. Hong Kong might be a good example. But in the process of word by mouth that is spread by social media, that nuance is lost. However, when it's on social media, because of the larger scale of audience that directly accesses media without filters and word of mouth and distortions, without agents and intermediate in the middle that pass all that information, that's when people can more directly see the full process of analysis and the contingent factors behind this content. That means that the message is less likely to be hijacked. Some white supremacists might not just quote Sam Harris, hey, this professor said this, therefore it's true. Instead, more people are directly viewing this content on a larger scale, preventing these messages from being hijacked by white supremacists and racists. We think that that is a net benefit. Second of all, is the spectrum of viewers is more diversified. Why is this the case? If you look at the distributional structures of social media and the mainstream platform, how does this happen on YouTube and social media? We think that A, the process of receiving this information is a self-selected process. You subscribe to channels which the viewers, the content appeals to you. It's known as, for example, a conservative channel, or else you would never subscribe to something that you wouldn't resonate with. There's a self-subscription process, and that's why it's more rigid in terms of the channels that you subscribe to. But second of all, the external factors that make you see this information, for example, it's forwarded by friends, it's forwarded by people who live in the same context, geographical context, with likely the same political views because they share the same interests as a result of geography, class, or the profession. And therefore, there's a chamber in which you receive information from like-minded people. Therefore, the channel is restricted to people who would have subscribed to these ideas in the first place. But third of all, YouTube is a bitch because all the algorithms recommend channels and recommended videos that were the same as the ones that you once clicked into, and therefore your entire horizons are much more restricted on YouTube. Even if for example, a liberal-minded individual wanted to find intellectual dark web content, it would still be pretty difficult for him because of the algorithms and echo chambers that I proposed to you. However, on mainstream media, although we agree that there is still a degree of biases and self-selection process in mainstream media, because mainstream media is less, we propose to you that the echo chambers are less and are eroding the mainstream media for 2 reasons. First of all, because mainstream media has incentives in promoting content across the spectrum. It has interest in expanding viewership on different channels and such. But second of all, inherently, because it's more spread on different sources and channels, for example, on digital, online content, and therefore, because of the reputation itself, people might go to CNN not only for political news, but also for sports news. That's more non-bipartisan, and therefore, in that process, they're more likely to be positive scholars for them to see other content on CNN, and therefore, we think that mainstream media, although you still have liberal and conservative divides, it's much less likely rigid echo chambers and less bipartisan than YouTube channels, and therefore, because of that, they must agree that there's a more diverse spectrum of viewers on mainstream media. What's the net benefit of this characteristics? First of all, it means that people across the spectrum can now understand logical and academic arguments for conservative arguments. This means that when you're on the status quo, in the status quo, when you're only viewing very emotional arguments that you don't really think is logical, there's a tendency to automatically dismiss them. It's only the point when liberal-minded people see well-made, well-analyzed academic arguments, that's when the point they stop viewing these as irrational and stop being dismissive. That's when they can now respond to this content. This is important because now they understand and can target these reasons in a more targeted manner. For example, when you think that unemployment is the cause of white supremacy, that's when the voter base can mobilize to solve these problems more directly. But it's also powerful for the white supremacists or the conservatives. In the status quo, where there's less incentive, where the information is being dismissed because it's automatically thought as irrational or not made, they feel like they're not being heard, and that's when they have the incentive to escalate the means of vocalizing. For example, this means the ultra-right protesting, or for example, this means mass-scale mobilization that's contingent on numbers. That's what we saw in Charleston, United States. We think that this leads to more polarization, more escalation, and then we think that overall, there's much less listening and discourse that happens because on our side, conclusively, there's a larger spectrum. But third of all, there's a moderation effect, because when Sam Harris knows that his content will be on big mainstream media, he has incentive to be more careful in his framing, because he not only has a fan of very avid supporters, he knows the probability of his content seen by other people. He knows that there's much larger backlash on mainstream media, commercial backlash. So he automatically does a self-filter process when he moderates his own message, when he knows that his message will be on mainstream platform. For those reasons, we're supremely proud to oppose.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and I'd like to invite the Leader of the Opposition. Okay, thank you, Leader of the Opposition, and I invite the Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the key assumption behind the whole case given by Leader of Opposition is that the content, their case, is that the content appeared on mainstream media exactly the same of the content on kind of intellectual dark web in YouTube and social media, which my Prime Minister already proved to you in terms of presentation of ideas and also the viewers and also how the idea is framing. We believe it will be ultimately different than in their world, where those kind of ideas only appear in the most extreme and most attention-seeking way, that is how her argument goes. For example, like how you see the argument like probably people of certain races are stupid than other races, right? We believe that that kind of argument and statement is not even elaboration, are more likely to appear on social media and YouTube. So we believe that what's the difference on our side, Mr. Speaker? My partner already proved to you how in status quo, for people holding different views, there are actually blockage to access of information, providing the division between social media and YouTube and also the mainstream media. We've already proven to you how the audiences on mainstream media are more likely to be diversified given the diverse content provided on social media, whereas on YouTube and social media, given the subscription process and also the way those media's algorithm try to always provide you the content of same ideas or the content that you might to subscribe, and also for example, the content producers are more likely, for example, for the advertisement fee they're going to receive from the number of viewers they're going to have with each video. That is why they have every incentive to distort the idea, just like her characterization goes. Because we want to have the most extreme ideas to entertain people, rather than really inform people of intellectual debate. What's the difference on mainstream media, Mr. Speaker? We believe there are several mechanisms of mainstream media that are going to prevent this externalization of ideas. The reason why is we believe that for those established mainstream media with reputation, for example, like BBC and CNN, they have natural incentive to hold the red line of that particular media. For example, they will never want people to think, oh, economy is promoting racist views, or oh, BBC is kind of having an article on, for example, black people are still more stupid than people of other races. Therefore, that is why I believe the moment when this content from intellectually dark web are going to appear on mainstream media, firstly, you are not going to have attention-seeking or clickbait titles, because those medias, they care about reputation. They care about how their loyal viewers, for example, those intellectually informed people, for example, those people who are educated, that are the mainstream viewers of those mainstream media, they're afraid of losing the readers like that. Therefore, we believe that extreme presentation of information, extreme ideas will never be the highlight on mainstream media. Therefore, we believe their claim that, oh, our side is going to aggravate comparison score is not true. Why we believe, I also believe that even if now people have access to information, they will not have incentive to read through the argument. We believe it's also not true, Ms. Speaker. Why is it the case? Because we believe that for those people who are loyal readers of intellectually dark web, currently the reason why they do not have incentive to read about economics, to read about liberal media or mainstream media, is because they know that their ideas will never be reflected on BBC and CNN. However, when you see those articles appear in headlines, appear on the front page of BBC and CNN, you are likely to click into the article to see exact argument of how the views you agree upon is viewed. However, Ms. Speaker, what's the difference here? We believe, compared to social media and YouTubers, where the only content producer and actor is you and yourself, I mean the content producers, we believe that for those websites like BBC and CNN, they have their own editors who are aware of the red lines they couldn't cross. That's why in order to avoid the misinterpretation or the misunderstanding that they're promoting a politically incorrect view, they have multiple methods to prevent the misunderstanding. How is that goes? For example, instead of highlighting emotionally appealing argument, if you have ever read Atlantis, you will see the argument that highlights within the article are actually reveal key logic of a particular argument. Moreover, in order to avoid that misunderstanding, they usually mix different views in the same article. For example, we believe the articles appear on mainstream media and more likely to be an article containing different views. For example, they are going to from citing ideas from intellectually dark web, while also providing opposing views to have this kind of opposing argument and have this kind of comparison between how different intellectuals holding different views are going to engage in intellectually discourse. And that is why we believe for those intellectually dark web readers who are now A, or will prove to why they now have incentive to have a look on mainstream media. B, will provide to you why, in terms of the editing process and also in terms of incentive to protect the reputation of mainstream media. Now those readers, when they read through the article, they are going to get the key logic. They are going to actually read about what is the opposing view, what is the liberal views of these ideas. But moreover, Mr. Speaker, we believe why this will create a more rational debate and why it will never create to give legitimation for politicians to now have these extreme policies, Mr. Speaker. Because we believe in the past, for politicians who are white supremacists, for politicians who are, for example, proposing racist views, they have a less strong opposition. Why is that the case? Because for liberals, they never understand the logic of them. For politically correct people, they never like even bother to engage with the debate. For example, why some people believe that certain races are intellectually inferior, because in their world they believe these arguments are automatically wrong. Therefore, if they already make the judgment by looking at the statement. However, currently, when they know that there is an intellectually, for example, professor now have this wholly made argument in the media, that is the moment you have a more elaborated opposition view. For example, to engage with the policy debate, to engage with, for example, that politician. Therefore, that politician faces more attack on a logical level. Therefore, we believe that an emotional appealing of that will be less, given that firstly, the voter base of that particular politician are now, according to our prior argument, are going to now have larger chances to see the side of liberal, to see how others are expressing the views. But moreover, we believe that for people on the liberal side, they're now more aware of how people believe in those views are, for example, being told, are being persuaded in certain arguments. Therefore, we believe they have more incentive to have more well-elaborated and have more engaged discussion in the debate, rather than both like shouting slogans in political debate. That is the moment when all the slogan or the kind of clickbait statement becomes the appealing thing for the politicians to gain votes. That is the moment you are going to have more extreme, for example, you are going to have more indoctrined voters that are going to vote for the politicians that have extreme policies and racist views. Very proud to propose.
Mr. Speaker, our opening opposition has done a very good job in terms of analyzing the nature of readership and how the selection bias of the audience are coming into play. And from the closing opposition, we are going to compare different platforms, right? We are going to promote academic platforms such as academic journals, such as academic seminars, and I will prove to you why these platforms are actually much better than the mainstream media that the government side is actually celebrating. But second of all, I will also talk about what is the result. I will also explain why the increased presence is actually the result of the popularity of social media. It is something that we should be regretful for. But before that, let's move on to their logic. Right? So the government's logic is very simple. Okay, first of all, social media sucks, and then after that, we need a mainstream media so that moderation can be achieved. But why do we think that it is? But why do you think that it does not work? So first of all, from the opening opposition, we have the idea that the readers still maintain their own selection bias when it comes to which articles they will choose to read, and when it comes to what kind of information they're going to, what are the information they're going to receive, right? But secondly, on the closing opposition we add on, we say that for those academics or for those scholars, they already have a very well-established platforms where they can establish their engagement, which is the academic platforms such as seminars or academic journals. And I'll analyze for you why they are better. So number one, we say that when it comes to scientific research, we say these people, I mean the people such as John Patterson, those extreme, those extreme academics, they pretend to make their research fair, right? For example, when they do the research, then it is very possible that they will fabricate their statistics or only choose the statistics that are in support to their viewpoints, right? But what is more serious here is that this kind of analysis or this kind of research results or publication are not able to be criticized by the readers, but they can only be criticized by the intellectuals. So that's why the academic journals are better platforms. But what we are going to say here is, for example, why do we say that the academics are more able to criticize the research? Because the academics have more ability and have more knowledge in terms of analyzing the data, in terms of collecting the same research that the conservative academics are able to conduct. So that's why we say these academics are more able to do so when it comes to seminars, when it comes to academic journals. And this is it is the only exclusively can be done by the academics. But why do we think that traditional media are bad, right? The reason why the mainstream media are bad, it is because number one, when it comes to academic platforms, such as seminars or such as academic journals, we say those academics are less motivated by capitalist interests. But when it comes to traditional media, you know that the media corporation always have someone behind them. There are always some corporations supporting them. So why we think that this argument is related? It relates to the new standard that we set as in closing opposition. We regret that kind of increased presence because we see that those academics, those conservative academics are doing a paradigm shift. They know that their opinions will not be accepted in the academic platform or in any kind of formal or intellectual platform. That's why they do a paradigm shift. They shift the focus to the social media. That's in the hope that more people will accept their views. Even if the closing government may argue that, oh, there are also some liberal academics that the experts can also engage with that in the mainstream platform. But we think that it also damages the reputation of the liberal academics as well. Why? Because the kind of platform, since this platform is not fair and it is motivated by capitalist interests, we think that even if you have liberal academics,
you make them less reasonable and make their results or publication less scientifically based. So that's why we think that that's why we think that even if the government sites can achieve the so-called moderation, we think the kind of moderation that they tend to achieve is not scientifically based and it is not reasonable. It is no longer reasonable at all. But secondly, why do we think that such kind of increased presence is actually the result of the popularity of social media, right? We think that number one, the reason why the mainstream media such as CNN or BBC start to report all these academic views, it is because of the trend that people no longer trust mainstream media and they will only go to the social media to receive information. So that's why we think it is bad. Because we are seeing a kind of movement that the CNN and BBC become more and more similar to those social media. So they will subscribe to their views in order to make their publications more appealing to the audience. Mr. Speaker, we think the government side has made an assumption. They assume that for the professors such as John Peterson, they will somehow one day they become, oh, I'm righteous and I want to publish my idea on social or on the mainstream media. We say no. It is very likely that actually it is the mainstream media who actively or proactively approach this academic first. Maybe there are some reporters which discover that on the social media on the website I have seen some videos which has a very high level of viewership. That's why maybe there is a good market here, so I can exploit. So that's why we think that. We think that because of the media's interest, and they now start to subscribe to the views that are expressed in the social media. So this is the platform that makes this, that makes these academics, these conservative academics popular. So what I have told you today. So the contribution from the closing opposition is, first, we are the only team which makes the comparison for you why other platforms such as academic platforms are better in terms of achieving moderation or achieving criticism or diversity of ideas, because it is the job that only the academics can do. And the second analysis I bring to you is that we try to prove to you that increased presence is actually the result of popularity of social media. So based on all these reasons, we are very proud to oppose this motion.
All right, I'd like to thank the member opposition by the government.
During this debate, we're debating about whether should the darknet academics, intellectual people have more increased presence in mainstream media. The main argument from the government side was that they have very distorted version of the darknet. They are thinking about darknet as some kind of platform on the internet that people have hard access to, and they barely can find that platform. But however, that darknet from outside, darknet is just a group of people, intellectual darknet is just a group of people who have access to the social media, and they can't put their content if they want. The comparison was very similar to the hackers, and an example that they have very similarity between anonymous groups and which are comparing to darknet. So from the outside, from the closing opposition, we propose the alternative version, which is academic journals, seminars, academic platforms, and we believe that that solution is the most suitable version for our today's society. What kind of society we today live in? So, for example, we have a lot of we can see the clear we can see clearly that people who are putting content on the internet mainly driven by clickbait ideology. In other words, they prefer to put they make a very overgeneralized statements in their titles, and in such case, the people who are reading those titles, people who are users of social media, they are not really driven in terms of reading the whole case. They can jump to conclusions. They don't necessarily need the idea of they don't necessarily need the backup. That's why we believe that academic journals and seminars are very good solution to that case. In other words, people. So if we have a certain belief that people are going against, for example, the anti-equality, people in academic journals, they have reasoning over there, they have analysis, they have research that has been done, and in terms of intellectual dark web, as it was proposed by closing opposition at the start, that for example, as an example of Jordan Peterson, he's not a person who is not known to anybody. He is a professor at one of the most popular University of Toronto. He is known to the world. He has a lot of views on YouTube. And with such case, we are saying that the dark web is not such a platform which is very hardly accessible to mainstream to usual user. So in our case, we are not going against. We are for their presence. What we are standing for is that there should not be increase in those things in darknet intellectuals, and also that even if the content is presented on the internet, people should read them through the clear distinguishment with analysis and research.
What is the impact of scientific criticism if no one reads it? How does it lessen the harm of incel ideas?
That's a very good point. In order to answer the question, if people don't read it, that was the point that was brought by the whip of opposing government. If people don't have incentive to simply read academic paper or academic article for that case, for that sake, in an academic journal, it simply means that they don't care about that topic. If people don't care about the topic, why they should read, right? At the first place, if they would have the main incentives that they are having is they start caring about the topic, and then also after that they do their research. And what we're standing for is not. What we're standing for is for people to not make a conclusion of a certain topic without making actual analysis, research of that topic, which is really the case in today's world social media. So there was also a point that it's dangerous for people. People can advocate their beliefs in terms of it goes against the actual beliefs. That's what happens with everyone who advocates something. That people who are advocating certain belief are always oppressed by other groups who are against that belief. And how can your idea of increasing social media presence solve that problem? How can increase of social media presence solve the problem of not being oppressed by other groups of different beliefs? And that was the case from the closing government side, that if we increase the intellectual dark web presence, that those people will be more accepted and those people will have better lives. Also, from the example, as we as a society, it's very difficult for us to. It's very easy for us to read short articles, and such short articles do not have reasoning. They mostly have only the conclusion of of ideas. And the same goes for YouTube, and the same goes for YouTube videos. They mostly the 5 to 10 minute videos that cannot support the idea fully. They lack the academic background, they lack analysis, they lack reasoning. And because of that, we believe, as a closing opposition, we believe that people affected by those short articles / content cannot make a reasoning conclusion of statements. That's why we oppose.
Thank you, everybody. Please head out. So we'll go to the bathroom now. Okay, anyway. Okay, thank you, everybody. I have 5 pieces of general feedback before I get into the result. Firstly, I gave this advice yesterday. I think everybody, again, needs to offer more POIs. I don't think that's just offering, I think that's also asking for POIs in your speech if you have not been offered a POI. For example, the Prime Minister took none, but none were offered. As DPM, you also took none, but when one was offered. At closing government, you didn't offer any POIs to opening opposition. Closing, you only offered a POI at member. Opposition, opening opposition, you only really offered one later into the debate as well. Opposition member didn't take a POI even though PM offered at 550. My point is, guys, it's very important to analyse these clashes. I need to have more engagement from people in this debate. It's also tactically in your interests to be offering POIs to other people to the extent that you can unsettle them, to the extent that it does mean that your material can be reinserted into the debate. Secondly, be careful of speaking over time. Obviously, that's not something which is directly penalised against you if you do, but it is something to keep in mind because at 7:15 or around that mark, the judge will stop listening. So after that, it is dead time. It's not going to continue to speak. Thirdly, I think that most speakers in this debate could have used a bit more structure and a bit more framing. And what I mean by that is not just your arguments, but why those arguments are important and why they matter. Fourthly, be very careful with the topic and the info slide. So the topic was this House supports the increased presence of the intellectual dark web on mainstream media, and why that's relevant will become clear sooner. And fifthly, also just make sure that you read the info slide and take down the names of the people so that you're not misnaming people in the debate. So in terms of the result, I thought this was a GovBench win. I gave the first to opening government, I gave the second to closing government, I gave the third to closing opposition, and unfortunately I gave the fourth to opening opposition. So the way I would describe this is firstly I'm going to talk about the first half of the debate and then talk about why each closing half, why you got up over your, why you didn't get up over your opening, why you did get up over your opening, and then also we'll talk about the back half clash. So in terms of opening opposition and the clash with opening government, the problem with your case is that most of your analysis, particularly the first half to 2/3 of each of your speeches, was about YouTube and social media, whereas the topic, as I just read out, is about supporting the increased presence on mainstream media. So my point is, at that point, all your analysis is to say the time consumption required to engage with YouTube, the way in which people are in the frame of mind of entertainment. That analysis may still apply to mainstream media, but the way in which you presented it was in terms of challenging the presentation of these views on YouTube. And I think that you guys initially weren't particularly clear with what you were proposing in your point under scale, but after that it became clear that you were giving the correct case in terms of the motion, in terms of the mainstream media. So that's to say that I think at the end of the PM speech it's quite clear what the prop is, and that is bodies like CNN, BBC, which obviously isn't YouTube. And at that point, you guys have to engage with that reality as opposed to the false counterfactual of YouTube. I think that your better push in this debate, which I think that OG should have engaged with a bit more, is that these are inherently bad ideas and the way that feeds into legitimacy. I thought that you had the beginnings of a point there in terms of politicians, but the mechanism itself wasn't explained to the full extent that needed to be. In terms of your other claims in this debate, you talked about how this is likely, and this is where you do engage with the mainstream media material, how it will be presented as short highlights or pithy conclusions. I think that's accurately and effectively dealt with in the deputy speech when there's structural reasons which I pointed to, such as maintaining the reputation of that body, that what is clickbait will be different, i.e. probably is less likely that it will be overtly racist ideas. And then there's also counter checks or checks and balances such as editors and producers, and that those institutions are likely to give opposing views. I think at that point, for you to get further in this debate, at the point at which half your analysis is very hard to credit because it deals with the wrong counterfactual, I think you need to engage a bit more with challenging the claims also coming out of opening government, which are to do with how it's important to be able to challenge these ideas and how it's also important for these people to be felt that they are being listened to and that they are being heard, and the way in which that plays into their incentives to propagate and promulgate these ideas. In terms of opening government more explicitly, I think that you are good on making claims about how this cuts across geography in ways in which social media doesn't, how you can get above and beyond things such as algorithms which necessarily make you force you into a bubble in a more structural way and watching, say, at least most mainstream medias, and why there would be an incentive for you to tone down your message. So ultimately, I'm not totally convinced that, again, these are views which are necessarily beneficially propagated to society through mainstream media, but I am convinced that you've proved at least some counterfactual benefit in terms of the way in which these people are likely to present their ideas and the level of engagement and critique that can be offered. The other thing I will say is at the start of your speech in PM, you basically say that the opposition has to agree with all of these points. Obviously, that's just empty rhetoric, because obviously they don't have to agree with any of them. So I just don't think they added much to your case. But that's just probably more personal feedback. So now moving into the back half, I'll probably start with CO actually. So the extension that you provided was on counterpropping academic platforms. My issue I have with this extension is you never prove the full extent of the mutual exclusivity, and that's to say it's not clearly why those discussions on academic platforms don't also occur in the government's world. They're only supporting the increased presence on mainstream media. They aren't also supporting the removal of those discussions in academic journals and things like that. That's to say that even to that extent, I think at the point at which you guys entered the debate has, at its highest, is presuming some form of reflexivity here where those discussions will go back and forth between mainstream media and academic journals. So my point there is you can't claim the benefits of counterpropping academic platforms as opposed to mainstream media, because that's not necessarily the position of the government teams in this debate. Your argument on the increased presence due to the popularity of social media was the relevance of that was somewhat unclear to me. Presumably the relevance that you're implying is it's how attractive the ideas are, and that's to say that you're saying that they aren't actually, more attractive to people, it's just that social media is more attractive, therefore more people are viewing these ideas. I think for you to say that the BBC is now more like social media, which is the lens of the line of analysis which comes under here, sort of confuses correlation and causation, and to say that I don't think that the reason that the BBC is more like social media is because of their engagement with people from the intellectual dark web. I guess the ultimate byline for this is to say that it's unclear to me what that argument was intending or how it pushed forward your case, and at that point it's hard for me to credit. I think the other claim that you have is at the end of which how you say that these will be presented as short articles and they'll only have the conclusion presented. I think that's a claim that does come out in opening and therefore is derivative, but where I do think that you add to this debate is by clarifying, again, things which probably should have been clear from the start, which is what is the darknet, how does it work, who is Jordan Peterson, because it was sort of an implicit assumption in this debate that these people were completely fringe actors operating in areas of the internet which are completely different, when I think you do some work to make it a lot clearer and contextualise why there is a bit more weight to the case from the opposition bench as to the way in which these people actually act. And to be clear, the darknet and YouTube are completely different things. This is just my information for all of you. YouTube is not part of the darknet. They're saying that the intellectual darknet, which is more of a rhetorical claim, the darknet is something that you would use a completely different browser to access as opposed to YouTube, which is obviously more mainstream accessible. So now talking in terms of closing government, my issue with your extension is that it's somewhat derivative, or largely derivative, of opening government. That's to say that you talk about how when these ideas aren't in the mainstream, they're more attractive. I think that is the claim that we get from OG about why these people feel the need to be heard, and that's because they feel like they're on the fringes of society. The second problem of your extension is to say that you get less critique and the media can't show counterpoints. So the media will show, so you get more critique if they're on mainstream media, and the media can show counterpoints and moderates can be on to discuss. Again, I think that comes out at 2 points in the opening government case. Firstly, the Prime Minister talks about needing to critique these issues. The Deputy talks about how BBC, CNN, all those other mainstream media bodies have a structural incentive to provide counterpoints and to have that discussion. So to that extent, I think those claims are derivative. I think that you also fall a little bit into the trap of the sort of not understanding what is actually covered in this debate, which again is where I think that you guys do work, and that's to say that claims such as this is about the dark web or about incels, I think is very, very hard to prove. So I don't think that it's explicitly true that these people are promulgating those particular ideologies. Even if, and again, I'm not saying they don't, I'm just saying that you need to prove to me the analysis as to why, to the extent that incels aren't mentioned on the info slide, why the ideas which are attractive or presented by people like Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, and those types of people will find attractive. Where I do think you are good, and the reason I give you the second over closing opposition, is I think you push the comparative quite hard on them in terms of explaining to me why those people are disappointed, why they aren't happy, and they are dissatisfied with the world around them. And I also think you do some work to push back on the claims, taking your case at its best and presuming mutual exclusivity on notions of readership of academic platforms and why you don't get the change, which most teams in this debate seem to agree was the outcome which we were trying to achieve. So if that's your way, I had a good personal feedback. If not, that's what the rest of the round.
Yeah.